Why we use it in today's world is because of complexity. As people are grappling with nuances, they're grappling with elements that are incomprehensible. We cannot approach issues directly. We need to really look at very creative ways from a variety, hence it's creative toolmaster. It's almost like we're walking around with our toolkit, or as one of my profs said when I was doing my grad studies 30 years ago, you've always
Mhm.
want to have a full back pocket. You want to have a lot of different things in your pocket because one thing will not work for group A, but it may work for group B. And I think as a group and team coach, this is where we need that variety. One-on-one, our clients may be more similar than in the coaching many space of group and team coaching.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Britton, and welcome to the Coaching Many podcast. I've been on a mission for the last 20 years to expand the coaching conversation to many. Along with my co-host, Evana Valley, we're going to be exploring coaching as it relates to conversations, connection, and change in both personal and professional settings. Coaching Many is about creating empowering and thought-provoking spaces for conversation which strengthen relationships and enhance results. Throughout the Coaching Many podcast, we'll share tools, practices, and approaches to support you in your conversations, one dialogue at a time.
Evana, great to see you. It's great to sit down for another episode of our Coaching Many podcast. And I think our listeners are going to be very excited today. We're diving deep into the Coaching Superpower Framework, the Team and Group Coaching Superpower Framework. We've looked at a few of them already, but today we're diving into the landscape of my superpower, the Creative Toolmaster. Today, whatever year you're listening to this in, differentiation, the ability to stand out in the coaching space is absolutely critical. Our clients are wanting customized approaches. They're wanting things that are different and not the same old. And I think that's a wonderful lens to come to today with the Creative Toolmaster. We're going to look at what is the Creative Toolmaster, how might you cultivate it, and why it's important. So with that, what are you thinking about, Evana, as we think about the Creative Toolmaster? What comes to mind for you?
Yeah, wow. I will say with all confidence that integrating this superpower in my business, in my coaching, in my practices with groups and even individual has changed the landscape of my conversations. It really has. I often, when I'm asking for feedback, this is what they say is I love the tools. I love the charms. I love the dice. I love the visuals because it's a doorway to activate something that isn't so mental. It's a different way of accessing. I see tools as an extension of it's not our body, but it's a different way to activate different things within us. And for so many of my clients and maybe your clients, we are so much in our head and wanting to think things through, intellectualize things through, that
Yeah.
this supports the idea of another doorway, right? Like these tools, creativity is a doorway. It's
Yes.
not a destination. And I've
Mhm.
seen that. And the feedback I get about this speaks to that. And that's why I'm really passionate because it's been my growth edge.
Yeah.
And in the conversations I even hear in our classes, Jen, in group coaching essentials, and even in practicum, the programs I'm leading, there's some resistance to this. And it's not about getting it perfect. It's about opening access to a rich conversation.
And I think for those listening that may not have taken the coaching team group coaching superpower quiz, the Creative Toolmaster brings these creative approaches, just as Ivana said. It's the cards, it's the charms, it's an indirect doorway into new insights, etc. So we hope that today you're going to get some insights, maybe some reminders of things that you possibly already have in your toolkit, and perhaps an invitation of doing some new research or doing some new learning. Because while coaching questions are always fine, really the complexity, the challenges, the ability to bring people together from often very divisive lenses means that we need to approach conversations differently. So we'd love to share a few different sort of techniques, some different tools. really, I would assert that our whole business has come from the experiential education landscape. It's how I was trained in the 1980s. It's what I've done. And if you haven't listened to our episodes on experiential education, we invite you to do that. But very simply, it's in experiential ed, we are creating from what is. We are always starting with the what. Where are you? What's important? So that we can then explore the so what. So, what's important about the things that you're moving through? And now, what are you going to do differently? So, that is a very simplified version of an entire uh, profession and industry. But I think you can see and hear that the same roots exist for coaching
Mhm.
as it does for experiential ed. So I'm sometimes so immersed in this, Ivana. I am a creative tool master that I'm not going to see sometimes articulate it. What else do you think is important for people to know about the landscape of the creative tool master before we talk a little bit more about it?
I think like you said, it's really around the tools and the resources. And when we allow ourselves to have this toolbox, to have that chameleon, that flexibility, that agility to be present to what is in the conversation and it not feel so scripted or formulaic. Like
Mhm.
when we're listening to the needs of the clients and having a variety of tools or having a variety of slides on deck ready to be accessed. It doesn't mean you have to access all of them, but to
Yes.
have that ready, then that's what allows that differentiation. That's what allows that customization in the moment, which I think is a gift of the tool master, is that ability to be agile, to be flexible. And I
Mhm.
think this is a real growth edge. I know it was mine as a coach, as a grounded labyrinth who likes to really be in the pause, in the be here now. Sometimes to be in the be here now, I actually realize that I need to have different tools based on who's in the conversation to support the be here now. So
Yeah.
it's not one or the other. It's how do these overlap and how do these overlay? And we can only do that when we're actually developing our muscle, developing our skill set as a coach to give ourselves permission to experiment.
Yes. And I was almost wondering if you were going to say to create an experience, right? I think the creative tool
Thank
master
you.
is all about creating an experience, a unique
Totally.
experience for each and every group or team. And for some, that creative muscle is easy to flex. For others, it may not be. Again, I think there's many coach training programs that over time have said this is our boundary. And that is absolutely important. And I would assert that we are coaching in times that really are very, very unique. And so it can invite people to be getting more creative. We do know, and you've heard our other episodes around skills of the future, creativity is up there in the top 10 as identified by the
Yeah.
World Economic Forum. And it is something that is very hard to replace from AI. In fact, as a creative, and as a creative who uses AI, and I've been very much on the edge of looking at for the last 3 years of how do we use AI as a
Mhm.
creative in a generative space, respecting
Totally.
copyright, respecting intellectual property? How do we use it to further our craft? Very basically, like AI can be a tool. So we do want to make sure that we're flexing these creative muscles. And to something you sort of, I think, said indirectly, are we allowing ourselves to be creative? I think for some coaches, it's like, oh, they'll laugh at me. Oh, if I bring in charms, they're not going to take me seriously. This is where your
Yeah.
presence and how you show up really determines how people are going to receive what is being said. I always like to go back to a number of situations I had in the late 90s when my boss at the time would call me and she knew of my facilitation skills. In fact, the organization tapped those facilitation skills. And it was not uncommon to get a call on a Friday afternoon saying, Jen, we need you in ABC country next week. We're going to send you a ticket. We'll meet you in Frankfurt and pick you up at the airport. And Monday you're on and you're working with this people of 200 person
Yeah.
departments. And they would show up with their three-piece suit. But within half an hour, we'd have those sleeves rolled up. People were comfortable. because of the approaches. And that's really where the creative toolmaster archetype was born, because with so much very important things going on in the world right now, we also need to have fun. It is important to have some play, to lighten the load. Life is about contrast. If things are always great, we don't appreciate the downside. If things are always bad, we don't appreciate the light. And so, how do we help people really experience the range? And I think the creative toolmaster is bringing the range to the client in the room.
Yeah. I just want to name something because, again, you said it subtly, but I think it's important to name, even with the example of being brought into Frankfurt with 200 people and 3-piece suits. Yeah. So to me, there's layers here. One layer is our own understanding that tools are doorways to richer conversations. And then there's the layer of, as a coach, as a leader, you don't have to be a coach, as an internal coach, as an external coach, whatever that is, where is your mindset, your growth mindset around developing your competency, your skill? But something I just can't step over is with those things checked, there still needs to be that safety in the group. So you said within 30 minutes with the group of 200, but those first 30 minutes, you set up the foundation to be able to go there. So I'm going to say this. We have to check in. Is it our ego that is limiting us and getting out of our own comfort zone and grow and develop? Because I had some of that. I'm like, what? And I experimented in containers where I felt safe. I invited, would you like to try something different? That type of stuff. But I'm going to just say this, when a group resists a tool, they're not resisting creativity. They're protecting safety. So a prerequisite for this conversation of being a creative tool master is what we teach in essentials around that trust, safety, and connection, those fundamental elements that are needed so then we can flex that creativity.
Yeah.
What does that look like? How you go about that? We sell products to support the creative conversation, but I know many coaches, many facilitators have a whole array of their own.
Yeah.
But that safety is fundamental in order for this to have a distinctive experience, to create that. Wow, that was different.
Yes. And I would say we could say that about any of the superpowers, right? Learning design is learning design, and the presence piece is different than good learning design. So there are two different areas that need to work together. And whether we're bringing a creative tool master, whether we're bringing the grounded labyrinth, the spiral lighthouse coach, there's just, again, we want to put that on great scaffolding of learning.
Totally.
So it's not just our presence. We need more than that. And I think this, as in the journey of the growth of the coach, the maturity of the coach, some would call it the mastery, but I think it's ongoing maturation. We want to make sure that we're really looking at these layers. We're not just pulling in any tool. We're discerning, what does this team need more now? Do they need more connection? Do they need to really go to the edge so that they can be moving and growing and changing? Do they need to connect the dots? And those are all different approaches, regardless of whether it is a question, whether it is a tool, etc. So my hope today is that people are getting a little bit more discernment around, what are they walking into a conversation with? What are those things that you have? And just as Evana said, you might have your own toolkit. So use it, right? Like, are things just collecting dust? And how are you using it? Like, I think we need to understand the nuance of these in our own life before sometimes we feel confident bringing it in. Most of the things that we talk about here at the Coaching Money podcast, of course, are things that you can also be doing for yourself, right? And in one-on-one conversations. So I think really it's an interesting opportunity to be seeing how things are accessible and what you're making accessible for clients. So I want to take us into a bit of a science piece, if I may, because we're recording this in January of 2026, and over the last couple of weeks there have been some really interesting events. January 11th is now World Journaling Day. And I had the privilege of spending a day at the IA, the International Association of Journal Writers, so IAJW, which is spearheaded by one of our alumni, Linda Monk. Linda was with us in the early days of Group Coaching Essentials and the Knots. And so I want to give a shout out to what Linda has created. It's a global journaling body, professional association, people who journal. And it was wonderful to spend a day with her and others all around the world doing journaling, right? Creative Toolmaster, I would put journaling in this box.
Right.
And we do know how important that process is. I think about the many coaches who come and join us at Group and Team Coaching Essentials. And really, they are avid journalers. They may be doing morning pages from Julia Cameron's body of work. They may be, just having a process, but journaling is a creative approach. And whether you're working with CEOs or whether you're working with VPs or whether you're working with frontline staff, it may be as simple as just bringing a journal for people. Go to the dollar store, buy some journals,
Beautiful.
see how people make it their own. So I see you connecting with this one. This is one of a few that I want to bring as approaches. What's your take on this? How have you heard coaches in our Group Coaching Essentials incorporate journaling over the years?
I think in our conversations, there's just in terms of just reflective prompts to support deeper insight. I even think about even when you were talking science and journaling, I went to the nervous system, right? In terms of gratitude journaling.
Yes.
Yeah, gratitude journaling. Even I do the morning pages, and at night I do a self-worth journal. I journal at night. I have a specific book around self-worth. What are 3 things? These are my 3 prompts. I have 3 prompts. What are 3 things you value about yourself? What are 3 things that you accomplished? It doesn't have to be doing, it could be being. And then what are 3 ways you honored yourself today? And it's just, and that is for me, it's part of my evening routine to bring my nervous system back into regulation. So I think there's a layer of the tools that we use and the intentionality to why we're choosing the tools that we're using in our conversations. And journaling is one, but I always, from a science standpoint, I think it's also the why behind the why. What is the value? And not that you need to share that with the groups, but maybe there's some conversation around this to deepen that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are interested in some of the science, and I'm looking around to see in all the shifts of this room where my little box of goodies are. They were right here yesterday, but
Okay.
my son has moved them because, sometimes we don't know why it works. That's the creative spark of
Totally.
ooh, interesting. If I roll the dice, what might emerge? So I'm going to actually just step away for a minute to get the dice to illustrate this.
Sure. Sure.
And I've really had a lot of fun over the last decade. We first introduced the Conversation Sparker cards, and I think a lot of people are very familiar with card decks.
Yeah.
For years I used Visual Explorer with clients, but they were big and bold and very bulky. And if I was flying anywhere, it was hard to take them. So I created the Conversation Sparker deck, which is really postcard size, if you can imagine that. And out of that one then came the square journaling cards, which were launched just
Which
before the
people love.
pandemic. I know you love them, and I think
People love
have
them.
a
My
couple of them.
clients love them.
I think people love the question. And so
Yeah.
again, what are we trying to do? But I love the dice. I am the dice girl. And it's really fun. I've got 2 here right now. We got actually creativity is one. No joke.
Wow.
And the other one that I know you like, which is the release valve, right? So what's your
Yes.
release valve? And these come from the 90-day guide for success. So there are other dice set out there, but these are the reconnecting workspaces one, which have multiple layers. And so we've been doing them in the 26 for 26 co-working sprints. What's really interesting is it really is always sort of meeting people where they're at and creating that roll them at the start of the sprint. And it does often create that framework. So as an evolution, as the whole Conversation Sparker product line has evolved, it's been in service to the client. So there's an actual frame that people can read about in the choice article on trust that I wrote this fall around the pause, focus, create, activate. And in that choice article of fall 2025, it actually talks about why experiential, and specifically this conversation sparker process, builds trust in teams, which is yet another layer of the creative toolmaster, right? Sometimes the doorway and pathway into trust building is not direct. If you're too direct, that may actually create gap. It may create distance. So I think another reason why creative approaches are so important is, one, it slows down the pace. When I'm being asked to look at a visual, that can slow down the pace. It also, we know, activates different parts of the brain. And in fact, yesterday on LinkedIn, it was Blue Monday, the darkest day of the year, the third Monday of January. And I was sharing some images of sunsets and open space, because we know that even images create a sense of awe. And awe is a really important emotion to activate in times where things seem very bleak. Now, the beauty is, with visuals, you don't have to see it yourself. An image on a computer, an image in a photograph is going to be as powerful in activating that sense of awe as actually being physically immersed in the experience. That's pretty powerful.
Can I add, because that dice of release the valve really helped me. I want to articulate something and how that relates to these creative tools. Because for me, like, using a variety of tools, but more than a variety of tools, is inviting people to choose the image. Or even if you roll 3 dice, it doesn't mean they have, like, maybe it's choose the dice that resonates, like, to kind of open up that space. Like, to me, that when I heard release the valve in this context, was how can we support people in landing, in being, and changing that pace. And as a coach, as a facilitator, as a leader, part of that trust is that invitation, but also giving options. It's not just one thing. So what evokes awe in me in this moment and day and time is going to be different than what it is for you, which then allows that is part of that experimentation, part of that customization, part of that individualization, that it's not like I have to get this tool, that creative thing right. As the coach leader, you don't. And even as the person receiving these.
Absolutely. And again, it's a selectivity. We pick and we choose. We want to just see what resonates, what doesn't resonate. Every group, every team is going to be different. And I've really often been surprised, right? Like, I think about working with teams in, say, legal services. I might bring some assumptions around what those people will value, but they are the ones that typically come up to me at the first break and say, you know what, Jen, I'm so glad you brought in the visuals, because I didn't feel cornered to have to answer a direct question. That's a very interesting statement from a profession where questions are the backbone. So again, watch what assumptions you're making. And you might find that as you experiment and bring different things in, it also allows people permission to try something out, to see what might happen if we do it differently. Like, I think this is also part of the come from with the creative toolmaster. There's an unattachment. This may create some new insights that we would have never gotten to in a more direct route. And again, with things being very complex, there are no direct routes in. I think, I hope for listeners today that you notice where your comfort zone is, and maybe go to that cupboard if you physically have a cupboard, and see what's in it, and how you might use visuals. How, if you have the dice, how you might bring out the dice. If you have our conversation sparker charms, how will you, pull some charms for your clients, with your clients?
Yeah, I want to just name that, because I love the word you used, assumptions. I'm going to be a bit more strong with it. Is I sometimes see direct biases. Oh, my people would never journal.
Yeah.
And part of the energy of the creative Toolmaster is that learning yourselves, but trying it out and getting feedback. You in the conversation with the law office or legal association, they came to you and gave you that feedback. But I think part of our learning, part of our development is what works in group A is not going to work in group B or C. And so we can't assume. I say this for my own sake, like sometimes I really have to just check my biases on, is this my bias? And so I'm using it as a form to protect myself of vulnerable feedback and growth. But in doing that, I'm depriving others of an experience, of an aha, of awe,
Yes.
whatever that is. And I think that's something that really does need to be named. And it goes back to core competency, that coaching mindset. You know,
Mm-hmm.
where are you in that? Because even these 5 superpowers, this is really an invitation to stretch, to grow your who you are as a coach. And that requires a mindset. So we're having this conversation because this is your intellectual property. You've created this
Yeah.
through decades. And so this is grounded in experience. And so we're inviting this conversation because it does work. But we also have to recognize when we're getting in our own way and what is that cycle of learning that supports us in really what I know. I really, in my whole heart, know and believe that we stand for as coaches, as leaders, as parents around the kitchen table.
It's an augmentation, right? Like, I do not want us to over index to a superpower without the foundation of learning, of
Totally.
conversation. How do we really create a rich learning
Yes.
experience? So we want to bring it back to that as we start drawing to an end, but I want to just put one more piece on the table because we talked about journaling. We talked about the more creative ones and a little bit about the visual, right? Like just there is a huge amount of science in the visual. And so last week was also World Sketchnoting Week. And that's a really exciting process. Many of you are familiar, or maybe not, because I don't get to showcase it as much as other things, but I'm a visual facilitator. It's something I've been doing now for 6 years. I didn't realize it was
Wow.
6 years, but this is a piece of my work that clients love because it brings to life their conversations in a visual way. It's imagine a big whiteboard and I'm drawing as we go. I may be bringing in processes like draw your future, or I've actually evolved 3 new visual facilitation processes to bring to the Coaching and Change 2026 workshops, which this year are on trust and connection. And I think that's really important because to
Beautiful.
really build trust in an untrusting world right now, it's a radical act. It's a radical act. And so, how do we help people really get into naming the moments? As a facilitator of 40 years, it's not a direct conversation. And so, my work this year is really experimenting. And I use that experimenting, underline, bold. What if? What if we actually do it a different way? What if we use visuals? Because our brains react to visuals differently. When we see something, it activates the reticular articulating system. The brain then actively goes and seeks out that. So if I want a new tropical home, I'm going to put that on my vision board, and my brain is in part seeking it, scanning for it. It's the shiny red object, but it's not to be following the shiny red object. It's actually to be helping ourselves see the red object or the tropical home. And so there's a real strong science. And last week it was beautiful because as part of this World Sketchnoting Week, I was once again brought back into the orbit of one of my mentors, Patty Dablowski, who Patty's work is all the Draw Your Future, which you might have joined us with at here at Potentials Realize, because I'm one of a handful of certified facilitators globally with Patty's process. And every time I see her in action, and she is taking this work out, and it's her body of work, it is taking it out in so many amazing places, it is transforming. It is transforming people and organizations on a very dramatic way. And there's a whole science that is now documented behind that. So again, what I've seen over the last 6 years in bringing the Draw Your Future to organizations, individuals, entrepreneurs is it's different. It captures people's not only mind, but heart and spirit. And I think that is something that we do want to, when people are ready, because I think visioning is a hard thing when the world is
Yeah.
challenging. But if people are able to sort of lean into it, it can unlock some really interesting insights. So I just want to put visual facilitation
Beautiful.
on the table because again, in an AI enabled world, we can also activate AI. There was some interesting conversation last week about AI and graphic facilitation, which I was like, this
Mm,
is so cutting edge. Dan Rome spoke. Many of you know him from his best selling books, Back of the Napkin. We know for the last 2, 3 decades in business, right? Innovation is created not just through speaking, it's created through sketching, it's created through full body experiences. So, as we as a business continue to further expand, and this is not just a today thing, this has been us since the beginning of our work, but we become well known for coaching, but we are really about creating exceptional experiences. It's about taking your teams, taking your organizations through a 360 experience of body, of mind, and of spirit in with
yeah.
different doorways into that process because questions aren't enough. I'm going to be as bold in saying that. Questions are not enough for everyone. Maybe for some, but not for all in today's world.
Yeah, and I just so love this. I was at a cafe yesterday with a friend and we were brainstorming about a marketing strategy and she got the napkin and she's like, let's just do, and I was like, do you want papers? Like, no, let's do this on the back of a napkin. So I love
Yeah,
it. I love it. But
yeah,
what I want to articulate in saying is like that, whether it be the back of the napkin, that draw your future with Patty is that kinesthetic piece, right? Like that
mhm,
drawing, that touching that, and then a deeper layer. Cause me as the grounded labyrinth is how do we then support that somatic? How do we support people to embody that? So now that we've drawn this, now that we
yeah,
see that Caribbean
yeah,
landscape, how do we connect that? Helping them connect that at a deeper level
yeah,
in their body, using their body as another tool. There's the mind, like you said, the heart, the spirit, but the body. Where do you connect with that in the body to deepen that? So I say the body is also a creative tool because we're naturally creative, resourceful,
it
and
is.
whole.
Yeah. And in fact, Draw Your Future creates embodiment. There's an embodiment
Totally.
sequence in all of that.
Totally.
And the
Yeah.
shift, right? The shift as well from where you are and where you want to go.
Yeah.
So, listeners, we could keep on going, but we hope that really this episode is getting you thinking about where and what might you do to open some new doors into the coaching
Mhm.
conversation. Part of this is about being bold, it's about experimenting, it's also about listening and noticing the energy flow with your clients. That too is another part of the coaching process, competency around creating awareness. What are you noticing with energetic flows? And I think we need to keep bringing back this final best practice that I've been spotlighting in our 20th anniversary series, which you can find on LinkedIn. Really, remember the impact of coaching happens in between the calls. The
Mhm.
impact of coaching happens in between the calls. It's when people connect the dots. It's when they put their work and their insights into practice. The magic just doesn't happen in the room. So, what are you doing to create anchors or containers or structures that people can be referring to as a touch point? And that might be a piece of index card that people physically leave with. It might be something on their phone. It might be that visual that they take during the conversation and now can scroll and see it as a structure of remembering. As always, Ivana, love it. I think we've covered a lot of ground. What's standing out for you in today's episode?
Just the range of access available when we're present, when we're agile, and these creative tools are just they're actual tools that support richer conversations and integration beyond the hour, the 90 minutes, the half day session.
Yeah.
It's like something that stays with us as the participant and can be integrated and remembered years later.
Yeah.
And that's that differential experience that we want for our participants.
And we want for ourselves. You can do it for a year, you can do it for a couple of years, but can you do it for 20 years? Is this your life's work? So thank you for joining us. We hope that you'll take a look at the quiz. And with that, we will see you again soon. Take care, everyone.
Bye for now.